Greetings and welcome to the Developing Dad Podcast. I am your host, Michael J. Griffin Jr., and today we're going to talk about Black people. Short, fat, and proud of that? All right, but before we get started, I need you to like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you do not miss out on any of the content that I am producing. Without further ado, to the monologue. We are short, fat, and proud of that succinctly describes the Black community's relationship to gluttony. The quaint lyric sung by Winnie the Pooh in the Disney classic The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh is comical when applied to the make-believe bear. Sadly, however, it is tragic when describing the gluttony destroying the Black community. According to blackdemographics.com, Black people are the most obese ethnic group in America. We suffer from the dreaded co-morbidities more than any other ethnic group. However, in an odd twist, according to Pew Research Center, Black people are the most religious ethnicity in America. We attend church more frequently, regard religion as important in our daily lives, and have historically regarded faith in God as a primary cause for our behavior. So why is that odd? It's odd because if you know anything about the Bible, you know that it does not speak glowingly about gluttony. So why are the most religious people who esteem God and the Bible highly also marked by a lack of self-control in our eating habits? I believe that the reason is threefold. First, we have embraced shameful behavior by changing language. Second, our men have been systematically removed from the home by a combination of the government and Black women, leaving multiple generations unprotected and without direction. And finally, because it lacks works, our faith has become largely dead. All right, so that's a lot to unpack. First, I need to make the claim and I need to show you what I'm trying to prove. So let's get straight to number one. We've embraced shameful behavior. All right, we're embracing it and we're trying to change the language. All right, Proverbs 28:7 says, "Whoso keepeth the law is a wise son, but he that is a companion of riotous men," or it says gluttonous men, "shameth his father." All right. And even in Judges 3:17 says, "And he brought the present unto Eglon." This is Ehud, brought the present unto Eglon, king of Moab. And Eglon was a very fat man. And in 1 Samuel 4:18, "And it came to pass when he had made mention of the ark of God that he fell from off," this is Eli, "fell from off the seat backward by the side of the gate, and his neck brake, and he died. For he was an old man and heavy. He was fat, and he had judged Israel 40 years. And in Titus 1:2, Paul, one of themselves, even a prophet of their own, said, "The Cretans are always liars, evil beasts, slow bellies, or lazy gluttons." All right, so what have we done? But instead of being willing to call a spade or something what it is, we've changed the language, right? So now instead of we're prideful. We'll call ourselves thick or fine, curvaceous, BBW, voluptuous, big boned, right? Body positivity. Instead of using the language that shames, which is fat, overweight, and obese. Right? Gone are those terms. Those terms are seen as shameful terms, right? You're shaming language, right? When you're bullying when you use those terms. But those are the terms that they're in, right? Instead, like thick and curvaceous, voluptuous, those are just terms that obfuscate the reality of the fact that a person is overweight, obese, fat, and they're on death's doorstep, right? They're going to suffer all of the comorbidities that spring from gluttonous behavior. No, well, now I'm positive about the fact that I'm overweight, right? Again, you can't get away from the reality of what's going to happen to you based on those things. But again, we've changed that language, right? It's just a subtle shift. Okay. And then we're going to talk about the systematic removal of men. All right. So why is that important? Okay. So if you know your history, right, you know, the Moynihan Report in 1960s talked, the idea that there was a call for action in the Negro family. Instead of doing that, they do the welfare state. Men are systematically removed from the family because women are encouraged to have more children, but not have a man. You couldn't get your benefits because if the man was in the house or if you were married. So black people who were at that time were at the bottom of socioeconomic metrics, but at the top, they were at the top of ethical metrics like the crime rate and the family stability, right? Prior to that time. Okay, so the crime rate wasn't as bad. People were staying with their families, right? But then that hits, and slowly we get to the point where we're now still at the bottom. The war on poverty, still at the bottom, because poverty won, still at the bottom of all the socioeconomic metrics. But now we're also at the bottom of all of the ethical metrics. We have out of wed birth lock, out of I messed that term up on another podcast. Out of wedlock births, okay, and we're also 78% or 70+% of black children do not have a father in the home. These things are not good, and we're now at the bottom of those when we were once at the top. All right, prior to the 60s, we were the one. You were more likely to have your both of your parents together if you were black than you were in any other race if you lived in the country. But instead of so now that men have been systematically removed, you see, even Timothy talks about this here, right? I'm going to read this from the ESV. It says, "But understand this, 2 Timothy 3:1, that in the last days there will come times of difficulty, for people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having the appearance of godliness, but denying its power. Avoid such people." So Paul's telling Timothy, avoid these people. Now listen to this, verse 6. "For among those people above, all of these lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, swollen with conceit, all of that stuff, among them are those who will creep into households and capture weak women, burdened with sins, led astray by various passions, always learning and never able to arrive at the knowledge of the truth." Paul is saying these women who are weak-willed, that's what he's saying here, weak-willed women, right? They're susceptible to these men who come in and wow them with this false doctrine and draw them away from the truth, from what actually is true, because these women are already heaped up with sins. They're again, a lot of the times we can see this playing out in our own world, right? The men who have the largest following of women, it's never a surprise to me when a man who has a large following of women as a pastor or a preacher winds up involved in sexual immorality or adulterous behavior with those women. The Bible tells us that was going to happen. That this is what's going to be the pattern, because they creep into households. They can creep into so once the man is gone, once the man is not doing his duty, once the man is out of the household, they can creep into the household via social media. How many divorced women, single women have preachers online who they follow, right? Men who are captured, who are in their households via social media, right? Think about these types of things. The Bible speaks clearly about it if you know your word and if you pay attention, right? When the man is gone, and I'll just be honest with you, my wife does not listen to other preachers. She doesn't spend her time listening to other preachers. She's taught by me and our pastor. She gets our pastor's sermon, but she studies the word herself. I've taught and caught her how to study the word for herself. We study the word as a household. It's my job to protect my family. It's my job to promote sound doctrine in the house, so that a man can't come in and creep into my household and capture her when she's burdened with sins. And these women were burdened with sins, led astray by various passions. The connotation is that those were sexual passions. Again, you'll see it happening over and over. But when you systematically remove men, you remove the protection and covering that's there, that God is designed for them to be there. Women are supposed to, in 1 Corinthians, it says women are supposed to learn at home from their husbands, right? Systematically remove men, you remove protection, you remove all of those things that are most important. Again, now generations of young black people don't have that protection. They're rudderless. They don't have direction, because men provide structure, discipline, and direction to the family. All right. Okay. So the third thing, what happens next, is that our faith. All right. So you see largely that it says that black people are more more religious. And I'm gonna put the I'll put some of these. So these are some of the links that, I mean, you're gonna have them in the description, right? This is the blackdemographics.com. All right, so I want you to be able to see where I'm getting this information, right? Blacks being more religious. This is from pewresearch.org, right? It says that, you know, blacks overall are more religious than the U.S. public, right? 97% believe in God and a higher power, right? You can go here to this link and do the research for yourself. The average weight of women in the United States, right? Non-Hispanic black, 186.1 pounds is the average weight. When in the 1960s, it was 120, 130. All right. Think about this. This is the median income. We'll talk about that in a little bit. This is, what did I want to show you? It was the, let me get to that link, right? The obesity statistics, right? This is dangerous, right? This is heartbreaking. Okay. Like, these are your obesity statistics. Look at this, right? 55% of black women are obese. What does that mean? That means like a BMI of 29 or higher, right? 30 or more. 25 or more is overweight. Obese is 30 or more. 55% are obese over 20. Look at Asians, right? If you remember my last video on should black people be more Chinese, I think the answer, even in this video, I mean, I rarely see fat Asian people, and the statistics bear that out. We need to take a look at what other groups are doing and say, what is working for you, and take it into our community and start to use it, right? And basically the idea behind all of this is that they're doing what the Bible says. They may not be Christians, but they're still doing what the Bible says, right? That's the most important thing. All right. So faith without works, because our faith lacks the works, it's largely dead. It's largely dead, right? Who killed the black church, right? These are articles that are being written all over the place. But James 2:14 says, what good is it, my brothers, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can that faith save him? If a brother or sister is poorly clothed and lacking in daily food, and one of you says to him, go in peace, be warmed and filled, without giving them the things needed for the body, what good is that? So also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. What good is it to say that you believe in God when you're a glutton? It's pointless, because if God says gluttony is a sin and you indulge in it and change the language and say, oh, I'm a Christian, again, this is like the same thing with sexual immorality, the same thing with anger, the same thing with any other sin that you can name, homosexuality, whatever it is. If God says X is a sin and you just change the language, like abortion, oh, I'm pro-choice. No, you're murdering children, and changing the language, obfuscating the language, doesn't change the fact that you're disobedient to God's commands. The faith that you have is dead if you do not have works to go with it. If your works say you're not a Christian, but your mouth says that you are, your works are telling the truth and your mouth is lying. That's as simple as it can be put. Paul, like James says it, right? So what are the results of gluttony? And we see this happening even in our lives right now as Christians. Proverbs 23:20, be not among wine-bibbers, right? Or riotous eaters of flesh, gluttonous. For the drunkard and the glutton shall come to poverty, and drowsiness shall clothe a man with rags. Poverty. Why are we the poorest group? Part and parcel, right? Right? Why are we the poorest group? Because we lack self-control. People will try to put it on socioeconomic factors and things like that, but ultimately it comes down to what are we doing with our passions? Can we control and tame our passions? The glutton will come to poverty. All right. Proverbs 25:16. Sickness hast thou found, honey. Eat so much as is sufficient for thee, lest thou be filled therewith and vomited. Eating too much. Sickness comes when you overeat. And then specifically what the types of food that we eat. Right? So how can we reclaim this? One, I would say we need to reclaim shame language. Be willing to call obesity, being overweight or gluttony what it is. Call it out when you see it. More pastors need to preach about gluttony from the pulpit. Need to teach it. It needs to be something that is primary, because it's the thing that's killing. Like it's the silent killer. I live in the South. If you were to get rid of all the obese pastors, you get rid of a lot of them. It should be a disqualifier for pastors, but I'll go into that on another video. A man who has no self-control, because self-control is one of the main qualifications for a pastor. You should not have overweight pastors, obese pastors. It shouldn't even be a thing. Okay? We need to, the second thing, we need to reclaim that shame language and then learn how to eat for God's glory. So whether you eat or you drink, or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. 1 Corinthians 10:31. It is vitally important. Now, how can you do that? Right? You ask the same questions that you ask about anything when it comes to, like, what would God have me to do? What would God have me to do? What does God say? What does God's word say about this? Right? What does it say about it? Well, one, you should know what you're putting in your body. Right? Get some education about food. Right? And what's in your food and how that affects you. It's out there. Right? The effects of sugar, the effects of fat, the effects of all of these things, right? High fructose corn syrup, it's all out there, right? But the main thing is we need to practice temperance. I wanted to highlight this: portion control and fasting. Look at this, right? This is something that I don't think people pay enough attention to. In Matthew chapter 6, Jesus is talking about the 3 ways in which we worship. All right? Giving to the needy, praying, and fasting. Look at the language. Thus, when you give to the needy, the assumption is that you're going to do it as a Christian. You're going to do it. And when you pray, so you're going to give and you're going to pray, right? And then right down in verse 16, and when you fast, it's in the same category. You should fast, you should pray, and you should give. When's the last time you heard a sermon on fasting? When's the last time you've been implored from a pulpit to fast? These are the types of things. We've lost the mundane beauty of Christianity. These mundane things that we think don't have power. We much rather run around the church spouting Bible words and trying to have some kind of experience instead of just walking daily according to the precepts that God has given us. And in that way, we spread the knowledge of him everywhere, and our power, right, is more than just in machinations and things of that nature. We're actually living godly. We're living according to his precepts, right? How will they know you're my disciples? By your love one for another, right? If you love me, you'll keep my commandments. Right? These are the things that Jesus Christ says, and his disciples after him said the same thing. All right. So I'm going to conclude with that. Notice the second one has been kind of preachy. I'm gonna make one that's a little bit lighter later in the week. All right. But y'all forgive me. Sometimes I get a little bit excited. I get a little bit preachy. All right. But look, let me bring myself up. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see y'all on the next one. All right. Grace and peace.